I started out, I was drawn to America by the polarity. This environment the whole world is in today, where the loudest liar wins, where all these false narratives are taking over the media. And I was just extremely interested in trying to understand. So I traveled to DC. I was investigating a couple of different stories, and I stumbled across. I was doing an interview with Roger Stone, and I basically never stopped filming, and it became this 2-year roller coaster ride. That was in October 2019. I don't know if I was surprised. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of people, and it's a trial and error effort. Some people say yes, and others say no. So he said yes, but what I was surprised about was the drama that I had stepped into, and that seemed to never end. Well, I think one of the stories that I was tremendously interested in was this whole investigation into the Trump campaign's contacts to Russia during the 16 election. And when I began filming, this was as this investigation was getting into its final phase. And I think it was only 3 months after I first met Stone, he was arrested by the FBI in an operation in an early morning. And then there was his whole trial, and it was a circus with Stone surrounded by Proud Boys as his security detail protesting for him in DC. And I got to watch Stone as he orchestrated his own pardon, his presidential pardon, and then the election began, and Stone began, rolling out his effort to challenge the election results in case Trump would win, accusing Democrats of trying to steal the election. I mean, this was months ahead of the election. So, and then escalating all the way to January 6th and in the weeks after. So, I mean, it was like recording on an active crime scene for years, basically. I've never tried anything like it, and I don't think anything like this has ever been captured on film before. Yes, I think we had been filming for a little over a year when when Roger Stone one day showed up with another documentary crew in tow. And as it turned out, he had sold the rights exclusively to film him for a documentary to another crew behind my back. And I was cut off. And this coincided with all kinds of pressures in my life. We lost the funding for the film as well. And then one day, I mean, we went back to Denmark to try and regroup and find a way in. When you do observational films, the longer you film, the more dependent you become on your characters. You cannot just replace your characters because they are the backbone of the film. So we were completely dependent on getting Stone back into the film. So I decided to fly back to convince him and persuade him back. And then on the evening, I was stressed out of my mind. I was actually on the phone trying to raise money when I went to the gym before the flight to relax a bit, and then at the gym I was on the phone with some people trying to raise financing in the middle of working out, and I got a cardiac arrest, but a stranger stepped up and saved my life. I was so fortunate that a guy working out next to me was a doctor, so he saved my life. I think the reason why we have that whole storyline in the film is to demonstrate this side to Roger Stone. Roger Stone is, of course, in many ways, a very hard-boiled political operative and comes across as rather cynical at times, mostly. And this situation where I had a cardiac arrest but came back to life demonstrates that maybe, possibly, he felt some empathy, and that's why he allowed us to get back. So that's why it's in the film. In terms of the other film crew, Stone explained that when his sentence was commuted and he was not going to prison, they lost interest. They were interested in doing a prison story about him. Whether that is true or not.
Was that an American crew or Danish?
Yes, an American crew. They were paying him for filming. I never pay people I film because I think it taints the filming. But that was an American crew. Well, I think we have seen that's what the film shows to an extent that I think is pretty astonishing. That essentially what we end up experiencing in 2020 and on January 6th is the Trump movement and the Trump administration's ability to mobilize what can an outright lie that the election has been stolen, to mobilize Americans to protest, and as a result, millions of Americans has lost faith in the democratic process. I mean, that's the kind of false narratives I'm talking about, and it is. And of course, social media and digital distribution is instrumental in this process. I think this film is about 2024. I think this is the opening chapter of what we're going to see in 2024. It's a film about how it has been established as a truth to millions of Americans that they cannot trust democracy, they cannot distrust the electoral process. And how that is going to affect 2024 is, of course, something we don't know today, but it certainly is terrifying in my perspective. Yes, we are all. That's why I'm here, because we're all in the same environment. I mean, that's what is different to the States is, of course, that America is the most powerful democracy in the world and has traditionally been a bastion of stability. And whatever unfolds here in 24 will affect the entire free world. I don't want to be a doomsday preacher, so I try to keep it down, but I think you cannot overstate the stakes that are at play, not just to Americans, but to every modern democracy. Yeah, yes, I would definitely say he did. Roger Stone came up with Stop the Steal, the concept Stop the Steal, for the 2016 election in case Trump had lost. He obviously didn't, so it wasn't activated until 2020. And the whole purpose of Stop the Steal is to instrumentalize accusations of voter fraud to justify changing the state electors so that you can challenge the results. Stop the Steal became a sprawling, mushrooming movement, and I mean, that is obviously Roger Stone's brainchild. I think the most severe and serious impact he had was his influence on both the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, the groups that were at the violent forefront of the attack on January 6th. Roger Stone was in communication with leaders of both of those groups in the months running up to, through an encrypted chat group on Signal. And Enrique Tarrio, the then chairman of the Proud Boys, was Roger Stone's close ally. I would almost call him his assistant. and was closely coordinating with Roger Stone throughout. First of all, I would like to say I have no illusions about this film changing anyone's opinion. Where we are at, the film is a mirror, it's a Rorschach test, but cliches aside, if you are diehard on the right, you will see Stone as and his scheming as something that you revel in, that you find that you will giggle at him. And if you're on the left, you will be horrified. I don't think it will change many people's opinions. But what I do hope is that it will mobilize people to engage and have an opinion. That I think what's most important for democracies, whether it's in the US or in Europe or wherever, is that people are not complacent and that they have their voices heard. I'm not arguing for either side to win, but I think I think Americans and thus the rest of the world is facing some fundamental choices. And I really hope that people will rise from their couches and make their voices heard, regardless of what their positions are. Because complacency, I think it's sad. Democracy has failed if people do not take part. So that's what you can vote and engage in discussion and conversation with people that you disagree with.